Hello, my name is Rashad, and welcome to the web app section of NZMSA 2019. So in this section, we'll be learning how to create a React web app with TypeScript, and we'll also see some of the assessment criteria you'll need to pass Phase 1. So for the assessment criteria, you can find it under NZMSA, github.com/NZMSA if you go to 2019 Phase 1, and you go to Web App, and then it'll be somewhere in this README, so you can just scroll down and find it. So what we'll be creating today is this how old website, which will take in an image and it'll tell you how old he is. So if we look at the start here, Nadella's age, you see he is 51 years old, and we guess 52, which is pretty close. So yep, that's what we'll be creating. So let's get started. So I'll basically be doing how I expect you guys to be doing at home. So I'll just be copy pasting, and I'll explain to you as we go through it what each thing does and how it works. So before we start, you need to have Node installed, and you need Visual Studio Code. So if you don't have those already, you can go ahead and install them. Just run these two commands, npm i-g npm to just update npm if you haven't done so already. And you can also go ahead and install Create React App, which is just a tool that helps us to create a React project. Okay, so we'll get started, and I already got Create React App, so I'm going to start here, and it's going to create us a React and TypeScript project. So you might not have Yarn, so don't worry if you don't see this. It should all be fine. So we'll just let this load up. Okay, sweet, it's done. So we're not going to use Yarn, so I'll just remove this quickly. Now we have, this is our format, so this is what what's just the output of Create React App. So let's go into this by doing cd my app. And if you don't have this terminal open, you can open one by going View and Terminal. Okay, so now you can see we have a similar format to this, so that's good. So now if we want to run the React app, we'll just do npm run start, and now we should see our React app open up here in just a second. And you can see we've successfully started our React application. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start the coding process. So we start in app.tsx. We don't need any of this, so we can just make it return blank div. Don't worry if there's an error for now, we'll come back, and if there's any errors we'll fix them. So we'll just remove these two imports since we don't need them anymore, and we'll go ahead and delete app.css and logo.svg. Alright, so let's go into the header, and let's get to coding the header. So the header in our React app is just going to be this little element up here, which is the title. So this doesn't need any state or anything, which and state is just basically like a private field, if you know, a private field for a class, if you know object-oriented programming. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a new folder called components, and let's make a new folder in here called, oops, sorry, let's make a new folder called header. And within header we want two files, one called header.tsx and another file called header.css. And the CSS file will just be used for our styling, and the TSX file will just be used to have the code for our header. Okay, so I'll just paste this in quickly and you can see what it does. Okay, so we just import React, Oh, sorry, I just clicked away. We're importing React, and then we're just importing our CSS file that we have here. So this will make it available for any class to use. So you just need to remember that for the future. And all this is returning is a function. So whenever it encounters header, it will just run this function, and it will always return this one div with a h1 in it. So let's go ahead and do the styling really quickly. So the styling, and so styling is just going to make the text some like off whitish color, I guess, and it will just change the font size around a bit. Okay, so now we have the header done, and if you want to see that, we can go into the app.tsx and we can go import header from, and now we have to give it the path, so /components /header, and here then we can call it in here, so we can call header, and it's self-closing because we have no props to pass in, which is like a input to a function. So now we just have header, and if we save this, then we can just open up a new one, and we can do npm start. Oopsie daisies. Oh, I see what I've done. So I forgot to change into my app. So just start it again. Oh, one sec. Sorry about this. Let me just terminate this. Okay, if we just do npm run start or npm start, doesn't matter. And we'll see, hopefully, our header file loaded up. Okay, so as you can see, the contrast is pretty bad, so let's skip a little bit ahead and let's fix this. So if we go down and we just go to this, which will go into our index.css file, and we just replace it, and it should now set the background color to something more suitable, which is just something darker. So now it stands out and the header looks good. So we've done with the header. Let's go on to the drop area. So let's make a folder called drop area, and in here 2 files called drop area.tsx and drop area.css. Alright, now within the drop area.tsx, we need a module here called React Drop Zone. So what React Drop Zone is a basically lets us perform a drag and drop action into this. So if I actually go all the way to my desktop, where I have a so let me just change this image. Look at this duck image. So if I just change this, we can drop in a image as well. So this allows us to do this functionality. So we need to install it by doing npmi-save react dropzone, and we let it do its thing here. Alright, now that's done, let's go on and install React other types for this drop zone, and just do that by copying this command in, which is just shorthand for install. npmi is just shorthand for install, by the way. So now that's it's done, let's go ahead and code up the React drop zone. So React drop zone needs a state, and in the state we need an image files and a drop zone. And then for this class, I've also decided to help us by providing a function which will be set results. So we can just copy this first part, and all this is just basic setup for our class. So it's just setting up the drop area, and we've got React drop zone, but it's not used, so don't worry about that. This constructor, whenever you may have a constructor, you always need to call super, and you have to pass in the props, and that has to be your first thing you do. And then we're just setting up the state here. So this.state initializes our state. Okay, so now that we've got that, you'll notice that there's this onDrop function. So onDrop, and what that function is a onDrop is just a function, and then whenever drop zone gets a file, it'll call this function, and whatever we do in here will update our files. So the first thing we have to do is we have to update the state, which has our files, to be the files that we receive. So it takes in some files, so we update the files here, and then don't worry about this for now. So we just want to see the first file, so we just set that as a file, and then we go. So this is just setting up what happens when a load event is called. So here we go reader.read as binary string, and we pass in the file, which will read it out as a binary string, and it will go into this onload function, and then we set the binary string to be the result of event.target. Don't worry if you don't understand this, I wouldn't expect you to. So after that's done, we go into this if statement, and we just check here if it's of type string. Otherwise, this upload function, this btoa function, will throw an error. So this is just a safety precaution. And now you can see here we also need an upload function, and the upload function's purpose is to go to our API and say, hey, look, I've got this image, I need you to do something with it for me. So what we do is we do a fetch request, which is an HTTP request, and we're giving it in a binary, which we are reading here. If you haven't seen this base64 syntax, it's just saying I need this package, whatever it is, base64.js, I need that package, let it be available to me. So after it does the fetch request, so within this fetch request, I'm sorry if I'm going around a bit, there's a content type, and this content type is an application/octet stream. What that means is we're going to give in a binary, so the API now knows what to expect. So .then just means once this fetch call is finished, because it doesn't happen in line, this can wait a while, so this is async if you know what that is. Otherwise, don't worry about it. But just know that .then is after this fetch call is finished. We'll go and we'll check if the response that we get from that is okay. If it's not okay, we'll say, sorry, there's an error. Otherwise, we'll look at the response as a JSON format, and we can receive many JSON objects, but we just check if the length is less than 1, that means there is no faces detected, and then we just say no faces detected. We just pass in the image file length, which is going to be a function we'll create later. Otherwise, we can set the result to be ages, and then this JSON 0.faceattributes.age, which is just a nested, like a part inside this JSON object. So now that the upload function is complete, we'll go on to the render method. So all the render method is just a simple function, and here what it does is we just render out this React drop zone, and we set accept to image because we only want the images. We pass in this onDrop, and we just give it a slight style. And then in here you'll see this question mark, and that's like an if statement. This first part is when this evaluates to true. So if it's greater than 0, then we should do this, whatever's in this div. Otherwise, we want to render out a little message to let people know this is where they should drop images. Okay, so now that that's done, we can save this, and we can apply some styling to it. So let's just go ahead and put the styling in to our drop area.css. So now that's done, we'll just check and make sure the styling is applied, which it is, so that's good. Don't need to worry about this. So let's go ahead and go to the next part, which is our result area. So result will just display a little result message, so the age is 52 for us. So for that we want to just do 2 files, result.tsx. Oh, we just want to do 1 file, sorry, because I'm going to show you something here, which we'll do, which is to do with the styling. So if I go npm I save react loader spinner, then let's install that. So just give it a second to load here. Okay, now that it's loaded, we need to go into this images.dts file, and we need to declare the module React Loader Spinner. And that's because in TypeScript everything has to be explicitly typed so that our compiler doesn't get upset. Okay, so let's go into result.tsx and let's quickly just paste this in. Okay, and let me explain what's happening here. So we're just exporting a class here, and we only want the props. So this basically means for our state it's just an empty object, so we don't need to worry about it. And since we're never calling, we never need to access the state, we don't need a constructor, so that's good. It's a little less code to write. So here we just take in 2 props, a result, and a file length, and we just render it out with this little div which checks if the result is equal to an empty string and the file length is greater than 0, then we do our loader, which means it's loading. Otherwise we can just give whatever's in the result out. So now that that's done, we got to go back to our app, and now we got to add all these components in. Before we do that, so let's just start by actually putting all these in. So we have all our components, which is fine, so don't worry about this. Now we want a state because we're going to need, in the future, we'll need these 2 variables so that we can put them in. So I'm just going to quickly add the state here. So now that we have the state, we've got, we've just added in our little file length. So what this is just the txlint file complaining, so it just wants it alphabetically placed. So now that that's done, let's define that function that you kept seeing, which was result state, and let's just place it in. So because this function here is an arrow function, it means it's automatically bound to this class. And what that means is when we call this .setState, instead of it's always going to be referencing the current class that it's in. if, for example, we didn't have this arrow function and we didn't do something like this dot result state dot bind to this, then if we call this function without the arrow function or without this, then it would set the state of the class that's calling it. And that might be a bit confusing, but you don't need to worry too much about it. So we just have this result state which we call, and now we can wrap it up here just by adding in our little render method, which is here. Save. This is just complaining. You can change it if you want. There's no need to change the. Oh, there is a need to change it. Sorry, but yep. Once you've changed it, don't need to worry about that error. You can go ahead and write npm start and just waiting. Okay, so I've made a slight error when I copy pasted, so just change this to lowercase c. Sorry about the cough. Let it compile. Okay, well, this error. Okay. If you get this error, okay, what you need to do is go back to this npm and do at 4.2.0 and then you can start it up. Okay, sorry. We also need to go to the React drop zone. Let's also do 4.3.0. We're just rolling it back to an older version, which I know for a fact works like this. And then we can go ahead and start. And we have successfully created our held application. So we can go ahead and pass in our smiling Satya Nadella image, and you can see he's 52 years old. So like I mentioned before, just if you need to look, just follow this code along. Assessment criteria will be in here. But now I'll pass you over to Hayden, who will teach you about deploying this application.
Hi everyone, my name is Hayden, and in this video I'm going to show you how to deploy your web app to Azure using GitHub. So firstly, let's open up the browser and go to github.com/nzmsa. If you don't know already, this is where we'll put all our documentations for the video. So just navigate onto phase 1 and web app. So if you scroll down to about halfway in, you'll see a section called deployment. So if you don't want to watch the video, you can just follow the documentation right here. So before you begin, make sure you've done two things. You've activated Azure for Students, which is required for Azure as a subscription, and you've created a GitHub account. So if you don't have Azure for Students, just follow the steps here. If you don't have a GitHub account, just go to www.github.com and create a free account. So the first thing we're going to do is create a repository where we can put all our project files. So to do that, let's go to github.com, press the plus icon on this top right corner, and click New Repository. Here we want to give a repository name, so I'm just going to call it How Old. I'm going to make it public, initialize with a README, and add a git ignore of node. Cool, just create the repository, and we've created it. So it's got two files in here. It's got a git ignore and a README markdown file. So now what we want to do is clone this repository onto our computer. So press this button and copy this URL. So I prefer to use source tree, but if you'd like to use, say, for example, command line, git kraken, GitHub for desktop, feel free to do that. So I'm going to clone by URL, copy the URL here, add in a destination path. Just going to put it in desktop, create a new folder called How Old, and I'm just going to put it in there. Clone. So if you look under history, you can see that there's an initial commit where there were two files that were automatically added in. So now what we want to do is open up that repository folder, and I'm going to move all my project files into this folder. Cool. So now if we go on to source tree, you'll see that under file status there are some unstaged changes. So just quickly review them and stage and commit. Move project files, commit, and I'm going to push. So now if we go into our repository on github.com, you'll see that all our project files are now here. Perfect. So next up is we're going to create a web app through Azure. So go to portal.azure.com, and what we want to do is create a resource and click web app. You want to give your web app a name, which will essentially become the URL for the website. So I'm just going to go How Old NSA 2019. Cool, so I can use that. Choose the subscription. Yours won't say Visual Studio Enterprise, it'll say something else, but just choose the one that's available. Create new, leave everything else as it is. For runtime stack, I'm going to choose Node.js and click Create. So this might take some time, but let it do its thing. Cool, so deployment succeeded. I'm just going to go into my resource now. So under Overview, if you press Browse, it'll open up the website. So it's going to be the name I gave, .azurewebsites.net. Here we can see that it's just got a generic landing page. So now what we want to do is connect our Azure resource to GitHub to do continuous deployment. So to do that, under Deployment, click Deployment Center, click GitHub. Notice that you can there are all sorts of different ways you can deploy using Azure repos, Bitbucket, FTP, local Git. We're just going to use GitHub for this video. Continue. Yep, keep it in the default. And I'm going to choose my organization, repository. Called How Old Branch Master. Press continue, and we're done. So what it's doing now is it's going to go into github.com, get the latest commit, and try to deploy it. Just press refresh. You can see that it's got the latest commit, which I've named the message move project files, and it's doing a build. If you want to see what it's doing in the background, just press here and show logs. So it's actually doing an npm install. So this actually might take a bit of time, so just wait and yeah, it'll just automatically build. And we are done. So according to the logs, the deployment was successful. So let's go into overview and open up our web app. And perfect. So let's just test this by uploading a photo of Elon Musk. So it's saying he's 47. And he actually is. So this is really good. So congratulations, you've successfully deployed your app. Hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching. Thanks everyone.